right, we are back with another edition of Digging Deep. I'm really excited for this one. I think a lot of people are excited about these two possible matchups. So we decided to lump them both together because you can't say one guy without mentioning the other. Of course, it's the iconic Nick and Nate Diaz. So obviously we haven't seen Nick since 2015 when he lost to Anderson Silva. It was later overturned. That was the last time we saw Nick Diaz. A lot of people would be like, we had the conversation a little earlier. I think Nate Diaz is a bigger draw right now than Nick Diaz. I think had Nick Diaz beat Anderson Silva, he could have blown up into Conor-like superstardom. And Nate Diaz obviously has that win over Conor. We haven't seen him since his loss for the BMF belt to Jorge Masvidal back in 2019. So obviously he's been a little bit more active. We're going to start off by breaking down Nick Diaz. Kevin Mubenga, who's Nick Diaz's manager, said that there is a 99.999999% chance, and he said it just like that we would see Nick Diaz in 2021. So we're not just making these up. There's a very good chance that we could see Nick Diaz in 2021. So we're going to go ahead and matchmake both of these guys and who we think they should face on their return. So obviously, first we have Nick Diaz. So the former Strikeforce champion, Nick Diaz, is 26-9, 37 years of age, 6'1", obviously welterweight. He has competed at middleweight. He's got a 76-inch reach. So that being said, I'll let you take over here, man. Who do you have for Nick Diaz?
Man, for one, I'm a huge fan of the Diaz brothers. As you know, they're both in my top 5, favorite fighters of all time. They're legends. I love them. I would love to see the return of Nick Diaz. This would be one of the most exciting returns we could have in 2021 next to maybe, TJ Dillashaw. But I still think Nick, he's got that legend status. So he hasn't fought since 2015. We have seen pictures surface, and I think Nick looked like he was in amazing shape. I think if he came back, a couple fights I would enjoy would be, for one, Nick gets the rematch against Carlos Condit, somebody he lost to by unanimous decision at UFC 143. Condit's coming off of a big win against Matt Brown. I'm not sure if it's what Condit would exactly want to entertain right now if he's looking to move further up the welterweight rankings, but I can't see why he wouldn't love a fight with Nick Diaz. Other potential matchups I'm looking at are Diego Sanchez's retirement fight. So he goes out and Nick comes back. I think that would be extremely entertaining. Or it has to be a legend if it's going to be Nick Diaz. So I think maybe a rematch with Robbie Lawler could be something that would be super interesting. Or I know he might be looking to do other things at this moment in his career, but maybe Donald Cerrone goes up to 170 and fights Nick Diaz.
Yeah, I love all those fights. Obviously, Diego Sanchez and Nick Diaz have their history. They've fought before. Robbie Lawler would be unbelievable as well. I actually went a little bit different. The only same name we have is Carlos Condit, and for obvious reasons. I actually went with Tyron Woodley, who Tyron Woodley wanted that fight a couple of years ago when he was champion. Never ended up happening. Tyron Woodley's lost 3 straight fights. Could make a lot of sense, man. I think Tyron Woodley would get out of bed for that one. That would be one that would fire him up. And Nick Diaz, if he goes out there and beats arguably second or third best welterweight champion in UFC history, dude, he could be fighting Kamaru Usman like a month after that if he wanted to. Another name I had on here, it's a guy who's been out of action for a while. He indicated he wants one last fight. We see him every week, but usually it's not inside the cage. It's Dan Hardy. I think that would be a fun fight as well for Dan Hardy. Obviously, he also competed for the welterweight title, fell short to George St. Pierre. So yeah, I think any of those 3 fights are exciting. And I think with Nick Diaz, like you said, it's got to be a legend, right? You're not going to get this guy to bed to go out and fight, Ponzinibbio or one of these other guys. It's got to be a guy who's got a legacy there. And I think any of those fights make sense.
Can I give you one more? I think we have to talk about. I think one more potential option could really be Jorge Masvidal. Yeah. He avenges his little brother. He fights Masvidal. I know people would like to pull the narrative that, Nick would get knocked out in that fight. Nick's been finished once in his career. And it was like 20 years ago to Jeremy Jackson, who he finished 2 fights later. That's the only time Nick's actually been, really finished in a fight. Barring a cut to KJ Noons, that was it. So, he's just as durable as Nate. They're so tough. And, the storyline, the promo of Nick coming back to fight Masvidal. And Masvidal's talked about it. I feel like he might not mind it.
Yeah, I mean, Masvidal's in the same boat where he's really a draw and he wants big fights. And right now, there's no bigger fight, I mean, ever than Nick Diaz. Anyone would fight Nick Diaz. That being said, if you had one pick, if Nick said, you know what, Joe, you get to pick my last fight, who would you be calling?
I think for Nick's last fight,
Yeah.
Ooh, he can only come back for one more. Man, Carlos Condit. I think because he's in the limelight right now. He's coming off of the co-main event victory on ABC. He's fresh in people's heads, and then Condit, and then Nick gets to come back and avenge a loss. I think that would work. I mean, Anderson Silva popped in my head real quick too, but he's no longer with the UFC. But that would have been cool.
Yeah, and a nice little revenge fight for him, right? Like the last one, obviously he lost, but it got overturned, so he could come back with a vengeance there. I'm going to go on a limb and just say Tyron Woodley. I think obviously Carlos Condit for me would be a fun fight too, and I think Jorge Masvidal would be fun if Nick Diaz had a tune-up. I just don't think throwing him right at Jorge Masvidal right away makes a ton of sense. We haven't seen him in 5 years. 6 years almost now. So I'm going to go with Tyron Woodley, and I think both guys really need that win. I think if Nick Diaz goes out there and beats Tyron Woodley, it's huge for him. Great way to walk out in the sunset, and same with Tyron. I think he's got one foot out the door already, and why not give him a big fight? I think he deserves it, whether the UFC likes him or not. All that history they had. Tyron Woodley deserves a big fight, and Nick Diaz is that guy.
Man, that's a matchup I never would have thought of. That's great. I like that.
And this is also hypothetically speaking, because if he were to stay at 170, right, like the guy could go to 55. He's indicated that he's lighter than he's ever been. He's competed at middleweight, so who knows? We're just putting him at welterweight because that's where he spent the bulk of his career. That brings us to little brother Nate Diaz, and same thing. We're going to keep him at lightweight. So Nate Diaz, 155 pounds, 76-inch reach, 6 feet tall, 35 years old, 2 years the junior of his older brother Nick, 20 wins, 12 losses, which is actually very puzzling. I mean, I knew his record wasn't amazing. I knew he had a lot of losses on there. I didn't realize it was that many.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask Nick, it's his opponents that are doing it. It's the way they're fighting. If they all wanted to just stay in the pocket, he would have won all 12 rounds.
That's true. I mean, I think he only has one actual TKO loss on his record, right? Josh Thompson. Everything else has been, decisions or the cut. He's never actually been put away. Even against Josh Thompson, he got rocked, and in his mind, it got stopped early. So,
he survived that kick from Masvidal where he leaned right into it.
Yeah, they're both of them are tough. So let's get into Nate, man. I mean, he's been more busy, so. I think it's a lot easier to make matchups for him because you can feed him guys at the top of the division. Whereas with Nick, you're like, I don't know where he is. I don't know if the guy can fight. Nate Diaz shows he still has it. So with that being said, man, who are your front runners for Nate Diaz?
Man, a lot of talk's been going on who Nate Diaz is going to fight. Dana White ruled out Tony Ferguson. I thought that would have been a very fun fight. I thought it made some sense. That's not an option anymore. Man, I would love to see Nate Diaz fight Justin Gaethje. For one, I think that would be a great matchup. Both guys are willing to just go to war. Both guys want the same thing out of each other when it comes to a fist fight. I mean, they're gonna get in there and they're gonna trade, and it's gonna give us all the entertainment we need. That would be an excellent stylistic matchup, I believe. Or Nate Diaz waits and he gets the winner of Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier. Now, I know that would maybe not make sense to a lot of people or anger them because of Nate's status, but like you said, I mean, he's one of the biggest pay-per-view draws out there next to Conor McGregor, and he was already scheduled to fight Dustin Poirier, and it was a fight I was looking forward to it. I was excited for it, and it didn't happen. And then the trilogy between him and Conor McGregor, I think, makes the most sense. He's one of the few people who have submitted Conor McGregor, who have beat Conor McGregor on the biggest stage. I mean, him fighting the winner of that fight makes sense. Him fighting Justin Gaethje would be really cool. Him fighting Jorge Masvidal in a rematch is a possibility. That's all I got, Sergio, for Nate Diaz.
Yeah, there's a lot of options for Nate. I mean, I think we got on a call earlier and we could not shut up about the prospects of these two guys. And the thing about Nate is, you mentioned it. I think had he beaten Conor the second time, he'd be the biggest draw in the UFC, period. And even still, I think he's second biggest. I think he's bigger than Jorge Masvidal. I don't think Masvidal pulls those numbers without Nate. I think Nate pulls those numbers without Jorge. Like, I think he could have picked any name out of a hat, and Nate Diaz would have sold out an arena. That's how big Nate Diaz is. UFC doesn't realize it, and it's unfortunate, but I think Nate Diaz is number 3 after Khabib and Conor in the UFC. That being said, I went a little bit different. Obviously, for me, Gaethje, I think, would be fun, stylistic matchup. I think he'd need another big win before getting a Gaethje, in my opinion. I mean, we really only saw him against Masvidal, and his only big win recently was against Anthony Pettis, who's no longer in the organization, who wasn't even ranked when he left the organization. So it's hard for me to just be like, yeah, let's give him the number 1 guy. So I went with Paul Felder. Paul Felder ruled that out, but I love that matchup. I also went a little bit different here. A guy who had one of the best performances, if not the best performance we have ever seen. Obviously, he's a featherweight, but he's fought at lightweight. He threw his name in the hat for next weekend. We've got a title fight like 4 months away. There's time, man. Holloway versus Nate Diaz. Or what the hell? Yeah, Holloway versus Nate Diaz. How crazy is that fight? Like,
I love it.
That's unbelievable. Think about the volume, the pressure of that fight, start to finish. You know that's not going to the ground. So for me, it doesn't make much sense in terms of the division. But right now, Holloway's in a good spot where he's the number 1 guy. You know, he's going to fight Volkanovski. If he moves up in weight and loses, he's still going to be the number 1 guy. So why not? Why not? And if Nate Diaz beats Max Holloway, he's number 1 contender at lightweight. Like, it's a great fight. It doesn't make much sense, but it doesn't slow anything else down. So
for super fights, for dream matchups, I love it. I mean, this is why you are the matchmaker, man.
Man, it's just I don't know. I watched Holloway last night, and I was like, man, who could withstand that much punishment? Like, I was like, I don't think there's anybody else in the UFC that could withstand that and still come back swinging. And I was like, actually, Nate Diaz,
who's a volume boxer as well. I mean, that would be very interesting.
And I think it could shatter the record that Max Holloway just did. I think they could both produce that amount of strikes. And Nate obviously is a little bit bigger, and Max has a little bit more momentum on his side right now. He's been busier. He's got some wins. He obviously was a former champion. It would be a massive win for Nate Diaz, and it would also be a huge payday for Max Holloway, something that he really deserves. And man, I love it. I love that fight. So that would be my front runner.
Hey, just thinking about it's fun. Just the idea in the head, just playing with it is fun.
And that's our picks, man. I can't wait to see what else we come up with. If you, like I said before on the last matchmaking call, if there's anybody else you guys want us to matchmake, throw it in the comments, and we will happily do it. Doesn't have to be as big of a name as Nick and Nate Diaz. Last time we did Brian Kelleher. It could be anybody. We are open to the challenge. Heck, it could even be guys like Logan Paul. We don't care. We'll find a good matchup for them, and we'll be creative. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on this video, and also be sure to check us out at fighterpath.com. Do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah. Tom Brady is playing Drew Brees in the playoffs right now, and me and you are recording this video, and that just goes to show how exciting this stuff really is to us. Nick Diaz's return, who Nate Diaz could potentially fight, because I wouldn't miss football for anything other than to talk to you about stuff like this, man. So listen to Sergio. If you have any suggestions, recommendations, leave them. We'd love to talk about it.
All right, and that's it for this episode of Digging Deep. Stay tuned. We've got some more stuff coming out this week. We'll see you guys next time.